Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. All right. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Stephanie Natchak, and we are here today to talk about a very important aspect of improving season over season as a runner, which is balancing your strength training and your running. And we've talked on the podcast before. I've done a couple of episodes in the last couple of seasons about strength training advice and mistakes with strength training and things of that nature, but how to balance and bring together running and strength training into one program, into one training cycle. This might be the most common question that I see runners asking in various online spaces that I'm part of. Whether it's a question around like, how are we balancing strength training and running? How are we fitting our strength training into our week? What does your week look like? Where are you putting your strength training and your running? How many days a week are you doing each one? And of course, a very important question, does anyone have a good strength training workout program they like? Looking for recommendations or looking for advice on where to go for more support and more resources and more guidance on how to strength train as a runner. And I find that a lot of us that are in the running space, so people like myself who are coaches, I'm also a certified personal trainer, your, physios, athletic therapists, strength and conditioning coaches, people who work with runners, we go on and on about the need for strength training. And there isn't a lack of information out there, right? Like if you look for it, if you search YouTube, for example, and I actually tried to do this. I thought like with Google, if you Google something, and maybe it doesn't even do this anymore, but if you Google something, it used to tell you like how many hits it had on Google. So you could like search something and it would tell you, is there like, 100,000 or a million? And I don't know, maybe the internet has just gotten way too big over the years for that to be a thing anymore. But I tried to go on YouTube and type in, strength training for runners. And I wanted to see like how many videos are we talking, like how many hits do you get on YouTube of videos for strength training for runners? And I mean, between the videos, the YouTube shorts, podcasts, you've got strength training for beginners, body weight strength training for older runners, runners with hip pain, runners with knee pain. You've got videos that have 5 exercises, 10 exercises. There are videos that are 5 minutes long. There are videos that are 10 minutes long, right? There's these like really short, like the YouTube shorts, which it's kind of like reels or like a TikTok video. I mean, I don't have a number. I was trying to sort of scrolling, seeing if there was going to be like a number of videos that came up. But when I just typed in strength training for runners, I mean, the list was endless, absolutely endless. And there are so many different formats and different, specific features that you might be looking for, whether you feel like you are a beginner or maybe you do have hip pain or knee pain. Maybe you're looking for a body weight workout. Maybe you're looking to work out at the gym, whatever it might be, right? And this is just specifically strength training for runners, right? These aren't even general basic strength training workouts that we're looking for here. I can only imagine how much more stuff there would be if you went there. And most of the time with these common popular pain points or questions or things that runners have that I see people talking about online a lot, it is not a lack of information, right? It is not that you can't go onto YouTube or go onto Google and type in strength training for runners. Maybe you include some information, for maybe older runners or younger runners or female runners or runners with injuries or whatever it might be, right? You can go on and you can search and you can find millions upon millions of pages and videos and blogs and all kinds of things that are going to give you pieces, tidbits of the information that you're looking for. And the same goes with nutrition, right? I work as a dietitian with runners, and I know that in this day and age, there is no shortage of information. And I'm part of the problem, right? I'm sitting here, I'm putting out the information. I am contributing to the vast options that you have in terms of looking for the content and then having a mountain, an absolute Everest-sized mountain of content that you have to sort through to figure out what it is that you need, right? Do you want 5 exercises, 10 exercises? Do you want a workout that lasts you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Like all of these different questions that then you don't even know where to begin. Which is the best video? Which is the right program, the right approach for you? So you're in luck because today I'm going to tell you where to start, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe you've done some of this Googling or searching on YouTube, you've asked in some of the groups that you're in, you've asked in those online spaces, online forums for help, for advice. And I mean, sometimes you see on like a Facebook post, people will get 100+ comments. Like, I don't know about you, but if I ever made a Facebook post asking for advice and 100 people responded and then inevitably started arguing back and forth in the comments, I'm not reading all of those. And some of those are probably really good pieces of advice and probably some really helpful resources, but it's just too much. It's just too much. And we're not going to click on every single link. We're not going to go to every website that gets referred. We're not going to check out every account, every person, every whatever that someone tells us to go check out, right? There's just too many options. And fortunately, a lot of them are probably saying the same thing. Like a lot of the content is probably pointing you in a similar direction, which is great, but that doesn't make it any easier because it's a tremendous amount of time that we then have to spend going through all of that information to actually get a plan together, right? We're going to spend more time trying to figure out what to do for our strength training on any given day than actually doing the strength training. And what I want for you going forward is to actually do the strength training, not spend that entire 20 or 30 minutes spinning in circles, scrolling through content, scrolling through YouTube, trying to find the right video to do today, right? I want you to know exactly what you're going to do. And I want you to know exactly why you're doing what you're doing so that you get the benefits that we promise you as coaches that you're going to get when you incorporate and balance strength training with your running. So where do we start? Okay, number one. The number one thing you have to do is you have to make the time in your training schedule, right? And this is not find the time. I want to be very clear about this. This is make the time. You have to prioritize it. In my opinion, most runners who are not actively doing strength training on a regular basis would benefit from shaving 2 or 3 miles off of their weekly running schedule to make the time for that extra 20 to 30 minutes of strength training, right? If you were to run 20 or 30 minutes less this week, that is probably not going to take away from your fitness more than the benefit to your strength, your speed, your endurance, your injury prevention-ness, as much as adding in that 20 to 30 minutes of strength training would give you, right? The risk benefit, the give take is heavily swayed towards strength training being the right option. Most runners would very much benefit from that. So that's where you're going to start, right? Is you're going to make the time in your training schedule. And this is something that can be challenging depending on where you're getting your running calendar from and the coach or the app or the program or the website or whatever it might be that you are using for your running programming. Because a lot of times you're going to see that there is either no mention of strength training on a running plan, which makes it really hard to understand like where to put it in the plan, where should you schedule it in, or there will be maybe a vague footnote that says, make sure you're also strength training a few times a week. But you're like, okay, like where, how? You've got me running like 5 or 6 days a week on this program. Like, how am I supposed to fit that in? We end up skipping a rest day, which I think is the wrong thing to do. Or maybe it is scheduled in, but there's no actual workouts. So it's like, okay, you're going to do your strength training here and here, but there's no mention of like what exercises to do. Hence why now you're spending all of that time spinning in circles, scrolling through all the different YouTube videos or going back in the posts that you've saved on Instagram, trying to like cobble together some sort of plan for today, right? And so what's the downside of doing it that way? The downside of doing it that way is that you're probably not going to be as consistent, right? It is easier. It is simpler to just go ahead and run those extra couple of miles, right? Like if you have to stop running, go down to your basement or go to the gym or wherever you do your strength training and figure out what to do and then do it. And you're not even sure if you're doing the right thing. You're not sure if you're doing the right exercises, how many reps, how many sets. How should I set this up? Am I supposed to do a circuit? Am I supposed to like do 3 sets of this and then wait and then move on to the next one? How long am I supposed to rest for in between? How heavy should I be lifting? What if I'm really sore after? Am I lifting too heavy? Am I going to hurt myself? Like we've got all of these questions swirling around about the strength training. It is way easier to just not do it and say, yeah, I know I should do my strength training, but just not, because every time we go to start, we just have so many questions. It just feels so overwhelming that it takes up all of our time, all of our extra energy and brain space, and then we just forget about it, right? Or maybe you do it once or twice, you go back the next week, oh, I don't remember what I did, what weight I did for this one. We're not progressing. We're not improving. We're not getting the results from the strength training because we're just kind of spinning our wheels doing the same stuff over and over again. So we have to make the time and prioritize it and then know what our goals with our strength training are. And this is something that I would love for you to spend some time on when you're in your season of planning your training block or planning out your races for the year, right? If one of your goals is to do more strength training and one of your goals is to more consistently incorporate strength training into your running and figure out how to balance strength and running, you have to know what is it that you want to get out of the strength training, right? Is it that I want to improve my body composition? Do I want to build endurance? Do I want to have more speed and power? Do I want to help prevent injury, right? And maybe you want to do all those things. That's great. That's fine. Maybe you want to just do a couple of those things. Whatever it is, understanding what your goals are for strength training is going to help ensure that you can pick a strength training program that has the right exercises for you. This does not need to be that complicated, right? There are only so many different ways the human body moves, right? I know it sounds like and it feels like, and maybe I've even said like there are endless numbers of exercises out there. I don't know if I've ever said that because I don't believe that to be true. But maybe you've heard people say there's so many endless numbers of exercise that you can do. And there are if we start getting fancy. Like if you're counting, let's say a bicep curl, right? Most people know what a bicep curl is. If you're not watching this on video, you cannot see that I'm doing a bicep curl. Basically, a bicep curl, right, is where you are pulling your hand up towards your shoulder, right? And so you're using your bicep muscle to pull, right? Your muscles only move one direction. Your muscles only move one direction. They can only pull and shorten. They don't push, right? If you're pushing away, like let's say you're doing a push-up and you're pushing away, it's actually the muscles on the opposing side that are pulling and being made shorter. And that's what is causing that pushing motion to occur, right? So if you think about it, think about any joint in your body, think about any part of your body that you could, that you would reasonably exercise, strength training in some way, right? It only moves one direction. So the specific movements that we're trying to do to strengthen those specific muscles, it's not that complicated. It's not that hard when you start to break it down into, okay, all of these body parts only move in so many directions. We can get fancy, right? We can do things standing on one leg. We can do things holding a dumbbell or with a band or on the floor or yes, okay, there's lots of variations on a movement that we can start to get fancier and maybe slightly alter the emphasis on a specific muscle or a specific movement, things like that, right? We can get really fancy with it. And if you're working with like a physiotherapist or an athletic therapist, you probably are doing some very specific exercises that target very specific, maybe small muscle groups and things like that to rehabilitate and strengthen some specific body part that they've assessed to be weak for you or needing to be strengthened. But for most people, right, who aren't injured, who want to just do a general strength training plan that is going to help build muscle, improve body composition, give them better speed, endurance, power, all of that wonderful stuff, it's pretty basic, right? We need to be doing pushing motions, pulling motions, hinging motions, squatting motions, and some core work, right? Doesn't have to be a lot of stuff, right? We're talking maybe even less than 10 exercises in total. What we do want to understand, though, is going to be the reps, the sets, and how do we want to set it up, right? Do we want to, let's say we're doing push-ups. Do we want to do 3 sets of 10 push-ups and then do 3 sets of a bent over row and then 3 sets of squats and just, one after another like that? Do we want to do more of a circuit style training where we're maybe going to do our push-ups, our rows, our squats, then go back to push-ups, and do it like that? That's where we can get fancy. There's a lot of different ways we can break it down. And there's honestly not a right or wrong answer in a lot of scenarios, right? A lot of these scenarios, there is lots of different ways that we could create a program, but none of them are necessarily going to be bad or wrong. It's just a different way of approaching it. And it depends on how much time you have, the equipment you have, where you're training. Some people who go to a gym, it's very hard for them to set up a circuit, right? Because there's other people around, other people want to use the equipment. You can't be on and off all these different machines. You got to just like do your thing here, be done with it. Over here, do your thing here, be done with it and move on, right? So there's some like things like that just we have to be realistic about it. So having a plan with the right exercises for you, like I said, it doesn't need to be complicated. For most people, the basic movements are going to be enough, especially, and this is the key, right? I want you to listen really closely to this. You have to understand how you're going to progress, right? Because we can keep the exercises themselves very, very basic. We can keep the exercises to those simple things, right? Your push-ups, your rows, your squats, your lunges, your deadlifts, a couple different core exercises. Doesn't have to be much, right? Less than 10 exercises. You're in and out of the gym 20, 30 minutes at the absolute most, right? Maybe even less than that. Done your workout in, a very quick period of time, right? The amount of time it would take you to run 2 or 3 miles. But you have to know how to make progress. And this is where I see so many runners getting nowhere with their strength training and then ultimately falling off of their strength training and not continue with being consistent because they're not getting results because they're not making progress. They maybe got a program, maybe they had an injury, went to a physio or athletic therapist, got a program, and they've been doing the same exercises with the same weight, the same reps, the same sets over and over and over again for weeks, months, years, I don't know, right? With no progression, right? No progress. And so what we need to understand, the most important thing that you need to do here is understand what am I working toward with these exercises. And now sometimes this is going to be really simple, right? Let's say your squats. I am working towards increasing the weight that I can lift when I'm doing my squats. Or I want to be able to do a set of 12 or 15 or 20 or whatever push-ups from my toes, right? And I'm working towards that. And so going back to what I said, the other thing we really want to think about here is what our strength training goals are. And even on an individual exercise level, understanding our strength training goals for each of these exercises. Are we trying to say we're doing some exercises where we are standing on one leg, right? We're focusing on increasing the strength in our hips, which is really key for better running form and really helpful for taking emphasis off of the knee when we're running, which of course is going to be helpful for injury prevention. And so maybe our goal with that is to be able to do a certain number of reps of a certain exercise without having to hold onto the wall for balance. Then maybe we're adding a weight, right? But knowing how we're going to progress rather than just doing the same things over and over again with no progression is the only way we're going to add that new challenge to continually stimulate our bodies to get stronger, right? And so we are maybe just increasing weight we're increasing reps, we're adding that new challenge to a movement, we're maybe combining movements together, but we have to be always thinking about how am I forcing my body to get stronger? How am I stimulating my body to have to improve and rise to this challenge? And it's funny because it's the exact same thing with our running, right? We have to do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, right? Run a little bit longer, a little bit faster, a little bit more often. Like we know that we have to progress with our running in order to improve with our running, but we sometimes forget that when it comes to the strength training, that we have to give it that same intention so that 20 or 30 minutes that we're doing count for something, right? We're not just wasting our time and then giving up because we're not getting anywhere, right? So that's really key. So this is where I want you to start. Then I want you to look at the bigger picture of how strength training plays a role in our overall running development. Because I see too many runners doing this. They're trying to achieve a lot of goals all at once with their race. And this is where you run into problems, right? Now I want you to imagine this scenario. And maybe this has been you, but this has been so many people that I've worked with over the years, right? Sign up for a race. You want to run faster. Maybe right now you are not running very much, running very little. You know you need to work on your strength as well, right? You want to, maybe this isn't your first time running this particular race or this particular distance, so you want to improve on your time from last time. But in the meantime, since that race, the last time you ran it, you haven't been running very much. You also know you need to do more strength training, right? So you are starting from, almost scratch, close to scratch with your running volume and also maybe your strength work, right? You know you want to get stronger. Maybe you've got like a weak spot or an old injury or something that you know you need to improve upon. Maybe you also want to improve body composition. You want to build some muscle, drop some body fat. You think that's going to help your performance. So now we're in a position, you've put yourself in a position where you're trying to increase your running volume because you need to for this race, right? You have to be building up your mileage in order to be able to complete the distance. We are trying to add intensity to develop your speed, and we're trying to build more muscle. And maybe also you want to be at a little bit of a calorie deficit because you're trying to lose some body fat, right? Now, when I think about all of these different goals that you might have going into this particular race, and maybe this race is like 3 or 4 months away, I'm a little tired and I'm a little bit overwhelmed just thinking about it, right? Increase volume, add intensity, increase the strength training, be really careful about calories and, food intake because we're trying to not see a lot of weight gain during this training cycle, right? Like all of these things is just a lot of balls in the air and a lot to juggle. And I know how challenging this is to create a program around because like this describes a lot of people who reach out to work with me, right? And what do we do instead, right? It's not that we can't make this work or make this happen. But as you can probably imagine, it's just a lot of balls in the air all at once. It's a lot of things that we're trying to juggle. It's a lot of different goals that can sometimes be in competition with each other. Not all the time, but definitely there are situations where trying to be in a calorie deficit, while also increasing volume and adding intensity and doing the strength training, trying to recover as quickly as possible, like all of those things, we need to be so meticulous with maintaining that calorie deficit, so strategic and so detailed about our eating that it's a level of oversight and tracking that maybe is just unsustainable in that season of life, right? Because we also then need to dedicate a good 20 to 30 minutes a day to tracking our food that well. And that just may not all come together for this particular training cycle. So what I want you to do instead, right? Think bigger picture, zoom out, take a step back, look at your training, not in just this 3 to 4 month chunk of time when you're actively training for a race, but instead we want to think about something called periodization. And what this means is that at different times of year, we're shifting our focus to different things. Now, what this doesn't mean, this is not that we are totally dropping the ball from one thing to another and from one season to another, right? All the balls are technically in the air, right? Our running, our strength training, our focus on nutrition, like all of this stuff is all still relevant and we're still doing all of the things. But some balls are getting a lot more attention than others, depending on that season that we're in. So with your running and your strength training, right, there are certain times of the year, certain seasons of your life where, we are going to have a greater emphasis, more days in our schedule, more time in our schedule dedicated to strength training versus the emphasis being on running. But then as we get into that training cycle, things are going to shift. We were dropping maybe from 4 days a week of strength training down to 2 or 3, making more space in our schedule for running. Maybe our workouts are getting shorter. So we're not spending an hour doing our strength training. We're cutting that down to 20 or 30 minutes, right? So we're not stopping the strength training entirely and losing our progress in that area. Instead, we're just cutting back a little bit to make space for the running. And then in the off season, we're cutting back on the running, making more space for more strength training. And this is periodization. And this is how we actually make progress season after season, year over year. So we can get stronger, get fitter, get faster, maybe even get leaner, right? Season over season. So rather than treating each training block like it's its own independent silo, and then when we don't have a race on the calendar, we're doing nothing. We're totally just leaving it all out, leaving it all to chance during the off season. And then we sign up for a race. Oh crap, I got to get ready for this race. Oh, I got to start running again, that kind of thing. We really need to think and plan for our future as runners, right? Our long-term goals that we want to achieve, and be thinking about, how do I make this work in a way that will get me where I want to go eventually, right? 3 years, 5 years, I don't know, 10 years, whatever it might be, rather than it being, okay, this training cycle, I'm going to sign up. It's coming up in a few months, panic to cram in all of this stuff. And then, not keep up with it, get really overwhelmed. You feel like this is too hard. It's too much. I can't, training for these races is so overwhelming. We can take a step back and we can focus on one thing at a time and build on that year over year until this all really seamlessly fits together for you and seamlessly flows. So balancing strength training and running comes down to understanding your goals, making the time in our training schedule, and periodizing our training so that we can focus on it for a season, but not totally overwhelm ourselves in the other season. Now, there's going to be a time where you're either going to have to do double workout days. So you're going to be running and strength training on the same day, depending on how many days you run, or you're going to be running one less day entirely to make space for that extra strength training workout. Both of these are totally valid. I don't have a issue or a problem with either one. It really just depends on your schedule, how much time you have on any given day to train, and what is going to make sense with your volume goals as well for that particular race. So I'll give an example. For me, I usually I'll do one day where I cross train and strength train, and then one day where I run and strength train. So I currently, as I'm training for the New York City Marathon, I am running 5 days a week. And so I don't have the ability to run the same mileage on fewer days to say only run 4 days a week and then have 2 dedicated strength training days. With my schedule, it makes more sense for me to run 5 days a week, but then fit in that 20 minutes of strength training on top of those 2 days. Am I perfect? No, of course not, right? Sometimes it's only one. Sometimes it's just one strength training workout in the week. But my history of, I was doing a lot of strength. I was doing strength training. I've been a certified personal trainer actually since 2009. So it has been, oh my gosh, what is that? 16 years. I have been a certified personal trainer for 16 years, guys. Oh, I'm just letting that sink in for a second. Wow. 16 years that I've been doing certified personal training. And so when I first started, I wasn't a runner when I first started doing personal training, right? I was teaching people about strength training. I was strength training. I mean, I was a little university age. I was still working on my nutrition degree. I was a little university age gym rat. I mean, gosh, we would spend hours at the gym, doing so much strength training. So now that I'm more invested in my running right now as I'm training for this marathon, I'm okay with doing less strength training right now. Mind you, I also been very fortunate to not be dealing with injuries. Fingers crossed, I'm getting into my last big weeks here. But in order to cut back on that, I know that I have that very solid foundation. And once this marathon is over, I get into my off season over the winter time, then I know that I'm going to be doing a lot more strength training and not be running nearly as many miles a week as I'm running right now. So it's okay to kind of roll with those seasons of life, but we want to be thinking about how are we building and making progress season over season and year after year. If you need help, I have everything you need to finally connect these dots on running and strength inside the Fuel Train Recover Club. So the Fuel Train Recover Club is my online program for runners. And what it has in there is fully customizable training plans that have your strength workouts not just scheduled, but built right in. And yes, that means right down to the actual exercises I want you to do, right down to the days of the week that I want you to do them, right down to the number of sets, the number of reps, all of that wonderful stuff that can sometimes feel so overwhelming as a runner. All of the strength is programmed right into those training plans that we have inside the club. And of course, inside the club, you also get expert coaching from me and support when you need it. So if you do need an update to a specific exercise, something isn't working, maybe you have different exercises from your physio that you want to incorporate, right? All of that stuff is we can do all of that because these programs are customizable to you. So if you're looking for someplace that you can get those types of programs, understand strength training to that deeper level and how to incorporate it into your running, we've got you covered inside the Fuel Train Recover Club. And of course, I also take a small number of one-on-one clients every season. And so in there, you're also getting a fully custom training plan created by me, tailored to your goals, tailored to what you're working towards with your running. And of course, those include strength training as well. All right, that is it for this week's episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this helpful and gives you a little bit of insight into how we can bring it all together to get you stronger while getting you faster. Maybe not always at the exact same time, but sometimes it all comes together. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and we will see you back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.